But seeing it all right there is truly shocking. But what is really interesting to me in that material, that totally shocking material about how Trump openly lied about winning the election. He knew he was lying. He worked to get states to throw out votes. He worked to create false electors. When none of those things worked, he then worked to whip up his people to put pressure on then Vice President Mike Pence to stay in office. But what I found most shocking, truly shocking, was when you see it laid out like that, you realize the power of lying. Trump was lying and he knew he was lying. And yet our society is suffering terribly because of those lies. And that, I think, is going to be a really important recognition going forward. The extraordinary power of lies and the extraordinary importance of pushing back against them. So that's my big takeaway from that first part of the document, because again, if you've been following this, there's not a lot you don't know, although it's very streamlined, it's very clear, but it just makes you realize the extraordinary damage that one person full of malice can do in a really heightened way. It really shows, and it really does echo what was known as the big lie from Adolf Hitler and his supporters in Germany, who did something very similar. But there are a couple other things that you're going to be interested in. One of them is, I keep hearing this and people keep writing to me about why can't Trump be disqualified under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution, which says you can't hold office if you've engaged in insurrection, when a number of courts have decided that he did engage in insurrection. And I would like to point out that the Senate, Republicans in the Senate, acquitted Trump of incitement to insurrection in the second impeachment. So he was acquitted of that by senators. Now, they were all Republican senators, and they weren't all the Republican senators, but he has been acquitted of incitement of insurrection. But what Jack Smith said was that, listen, there's some court precedents that say that he committed insurrection, but that law hasn't been used in 100 years. And it's also not clear what exactly, for legal purposes, insurrection means. That is, most, and I'm being a little bit vague here because I don't want to make the whole legal arguments. You know, I'm not a lawyer, but you can read this, it's all in there. But usually an insurrection means overthrowing an existing government, whereas what Trump did was he tried to stay in power. And that's got there's a different word for that. And Smith was like, I'm not sure that we could have won on that. And what they were trying to do was make sure everything they put forward, they could win on. Now, with those two things going forward, it makes it hard now for people to say, and who those people would be, to say Trump can't take office under the 14th Amendment, because under the third section of the 14th Amendment, because he committed insurrection. Do I think he committed insurrection? Absolutely. But that and $3.90 on average across the United States will get you a cup of coffee. So that is the other thing that was in the Smith document. And the other thing that really jumped out to me in the document was the section when Smith talks about how Trump weaponized the courts to make sure he wouldn't be tried. Because Smith argues, of course, that they would have convicted him on those 4 federal counts, that a jury would have convicted him on 4 counts. That's what they wouldn't have gone forward with those if they didn't think they could win them. But the combination of the Supreme Court absolutely slow walking his case and then declaring contrary to all precedent and to the well-established ideals of the founders of the nation with the Declaration of Independence and the framers of the Constitution, that a president must never be above the law, they decided contrary to that. And that, of course, gave Trump an enormous out. But then also, they talk about the many ways in which they would, for example, subpoena a witness and they would refuse to go. They would work that all the way through the courts till they would lose. And then, they'd find something else to do. And at one point, Twitter, simply refused to answer a subpoena, and they challenged that, and that took them, many months to get what they wanted out of that. And that suggests, I don't know what that suggests, but it's kind of an eye opener of the extraordinary degree to which Trump weaponized our legal system against us. Because at the end of the day, the legal system is ours, and he managed to weaponize that and to weaponize his lies to the point that he is now about to become the president of the United States again. And that's not okay. It's not okay that somebody lied and cheated their way into the presidency. And I don't mean that, I mean that in a current modern day sense, but I also mean it as somebody who is trying to defend the concepts of American democracy. I have 100% certainty that none of the framers of the Constitution would have winked at Trump becoming president. They simply wouldn't have done it. This is exactly what they feared. And that's not okay that we are now sitting here going, oh, well, oopsie poopsie. And we're doing so because somebody acted the way he did. And we could talk about how he got there. But I'm going to go on to some other things because I think that you are more interested. I could be wrong, but I think that you're more interested in that to start.